Rainy day. I'm going to go out to the shop and do some work. Broke this hammer the other day, so I figured I'd make my own hammer handle. I make a lot of tool handles, as you've probably seen in some of my previous videos. So let's go step by step on what it would take to make a new handle for a tool. Obviously, you have to get the wood out of the tool and get it all opened up. Once you've got the tool out, it's a good idea to clean it up. I took this over to the polishing wheel. The wood is probably one of the most important things that you have to decide on. This is ash, nice straight grain with no defects. Real simple. Trace out the old handle if you want to follow it. Make it a little different if you want to make it different. But on something like a hammer, make sure that you remember that the thickness of the wood and the spring of the wood is really important. So I've got a bandsaw. You could do this a number of ways. I'm speeding it up here because it's kind of it took probably 4 or 5 minutes to cut it out. And it's a little bit long on video here. It's not rocket science, just cut it all out. Probably the most important thing that you want to do is get the fit right, and getting if you overcut for the head, then all your work is shot. So take your time, really go slow here. It's better to inch your way up to it rather than try to cut it exactly from the get-go. And like I said, the thickness of the wood that you're going to be working down to is important, because if it's too chunky of a piece of wood, you're not going to get the nice spring back. I love a wooden handle on all my tools, much better than any of the new plastic handles or fiberglass handles. Something about the way wood feels in your hands. Now, there's a lot of ways you can do the carving. As I showed you before, you could whittle it down with a knife, or you can, in this case, I've got a draw knife. Draw knife is a pretty amazing tool. Every old farmer had one in his shop, because in days gone by, when they sold tools, they didn't sell them with the handles. So if you bought an axe or a froe or any kind of a tool, you'd have to go out and make your own handle. This is my all-time favorite tool for doing this sort of stuff. This is a spoke shave, and this is actually a really old spoke shave that dates back to the late 1700s. I was very lucky to acquire this, and every time I use it, I can feel the aura of the ancient craftsman. I can feel, all the hours of using it, because back then they didn't have power tools, so everything they did was by hand. So you can imagine somebody might be using this tool 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day. Back there, they didn't follow hours, so gosh, it could have been a 16-hour day working with these little tiny hand tools. Sped things up here too. Honestly, this didn't take that long, but it's kind of boring watching it at full speed. But I thought it was important that you saw all the different steps of the shaping. You just kind of keep tuning it and tuning it and tuning it. It gets better and better. Get all the edges round. You have to be careful with the draw knife, because if you catch the grain of the wood wrong, oops, boy, I screw up there. Oh, I catch the grain of the wood wrong, I drop my camera. Oh well, back to work. Like I said, you want to be really careful and switch up the tool if the grain starts running out. If you pull on it and you start getting the grain to lift, and you keep at it, it's going to tear it all the way out. So you kind of have to flip it around and follow the grain. Keep fitting the head. Like I said, don't go too aggressive. It's better to take little cuts and work your way up to it until you get the head just perfect. Take your time. But that being said, this whole project didn't take me very long. I figured in the time that it would take me to get in the car, drive down the hill, go to the hardware store, take the time to pick out a handle that looks good, make sure it fits, come home and put it in. I'd still have to take the old handle out and do all that work. But at the end of the day, I think the amount of time that it takes me to make a handle is time well spent, because you end up fitting the handle to your hand. You end up adjusting it so that it feels right. And here's the part that I think is one of the most important steps in the final finishing, is if there's any little sharp corners or any little bumps or anything that you can feel inside your hand, make sure you get it so that it feels good. And keep gripping it. you keep working on it until it just feels right. You know, it'll tell you when it feels right. You know, it's real clear. If there's any little bumps, imagine pounding nails with this all day long. If there's any little bit there, you're going to get some nasty blisters if you don't have it fit to your hand right. And I don't like to use varnish or lacquer on any of my handles. Every tool that you buy from the store comes pre-lacquered. I put oil on them. You know, I like to sand them up. You can sand it by hand if you want to, or use power tools, whatever you've got. I did a little embellishment here. I kind of made it my own tool. Sometimes I'll put, you know, little carvings or little details on there so that anybody who picks up my hammer knows it's not anyone else's hammer. It's my hammer. Looks like something I did. That was an expensive Vaughan head, and it was kind of rusty. I think I found this hammer, so I took some time to redo it. Now, really, I should have had the handle down on a stump or something. You try and do it in a vise, you have a lot of vibration. You saw where I cut the wedge in there, or the slot for the wedge. This is the steel wedge that I took out of the old one. You can start with a new one if you want to. I had it, so I used it. Be sure that you get it seated all the way down in there. And I even go so far as to take a tool and drive it in a little bit past the end of the hammerhead. As you drive it in, you're going to get little slivers that are coming up. It's easy enough to just carve them off with your knife, your pocket knife. You don't want those things catching you. This is important. The gaps between the steel wedge, you want to fill them with a good hardwood wedge. I made these out of maple. Good hardwood wedge that you can drive in there. You want to fill those gaps all the way around so that it really expands that wood and grips that hammerhead well. Some people put glue in there. Maybe I should have. I didn't on this one. They seem to hold up pretty well. If the hammerhead ever starts coming loose, you've got to make sure that you really seat it in there well. Last thing you want is to have the hammerhead come off. The last thing you do is oil it up and you're done. Altogether, I'd say it took me no more than an hour.